All right, and we are live. Welcome, DoorGrow hackers, to the DoorGrow Show. If you are a property management entrepreneur that wants to add doors, make a difference, increase revenue, help others impact lives, and you are interested in growing your business and life, and you are open to doing things a bit differently, then you are a DoorGrow hacker. DoorGrow hackers love the opportunities, daily variety, unique challenges, and freedom that property management brings. Many in real estate think you're crazy for doing it. You think they're crazy for not, because you realize that property management is the ultimate high trust gateway to real estate deals, relationships, and residual income. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management businesses and their owners. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. I'm your host, property management growth expert, Jason Hull, the founder and CEO of DoorGrow. Now, let's get into the show. And today I'm hanging out with the lovely Jo Oliveri from ireviloution.
Hi, Jason.
And hi, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. So we're going to get into your background first, but before we do that, I'm going to read your bio here for the audience, for the listeners. And so they have a little bit of understanding, because the topic we're going to be talking about is streamlining business operations. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure everybody here, everyone listening, clients, friends, property managers, they all could use a little bit of streamlining in their business operations. And that's something close and dear to my heart as well. So let me tell people a little bit about you here. So Jo, and you go by Jo or Jo-Anne?
Jo.
Okay. All right. So Jo is the founder and managing director of ireviloution and PM Leadership Summit, vice president, first team property management, with over 20 years real estate experience. I don't know what the CIPS and the TRC are. What are those?
CIPS is a National Association of Realtors designation. So it's a certified international property specialist. And the TRC is transnational referral certification. So they're very handy ones to have, especially, in property management, we're dealing with people from all around the world.
Okay. Yeah. So, and Jo is a leading authority on all things property management and inspiring force within the industry. As founder and managing director of ireviloution and the Property Management Leadership Summit, and vice president of First Team Property Management based in the USA, she is an international real estate identity who has trained over 500 agencies and thousands of agency owners and property managers worldwide. She is seen as a leading authority on all things property management and regularly speaks at the industry's top Australian and North American conferences. She's also author of the real estate book, Find Your Property Manager Now, Hire the Right Agent and Make More Money. As well, she was selected as an industry thought leader of the year finalist for 2015, 2016, and 2017 Real Estate Business Awards, and is an industry influencer for the Elite Agent 2017 Awards. All right. So Jo is kind of a big deal, right? So Jo, welcome to the show again. So let's get in. So tell everybody, how'd you get into this property management stuff? And for those that are watching, I'm hanging out in my son's room. It was the only quiet place today. So I've got pug posters behind me for those that can't see how cool this kid is here. So
it's an awesome room.
Yeah. So he likes pugs. He likes pugs. All right. So Jo, tell everybody, how'd you kind of get into this?
Well, it was actually, I came from a business background. We had a family business in grocery stores and convenience stores, and we we were involved in the 80s, kind of like downturn in businesses, and we had very high interest rates. We were paying on our business loan and our home loan, and we lost everything. So we were bankrupted. And what I discovered is that, like the business I was working in was my husband's passion. It was not my passion.
Yeah.
And I wanted to find something I was passionate about. I was a mum. I had 3 small children. And I read this book by Anthony Robbins called Awaken the Giant Within. And I did all of it's an excellent book. It changed my life. And I did all of the exercises. And at the end of that, it was steering me towards real estate. And I was a tenant at the time because we'd lost our property. And property management is where I landed. But what was really interesting is because I came from a business background, I ended up getting a job with a company in Perth, Western Australia, where I originally come from. And I thought, this is like an awesome business. And there were 3 other property managers, and I was asking them, like, what do I do? And they were all telling me different things. And I thought, how do you run a business like this where no one is doing the same job the same way? And they were talking to clients differently, giving different advice. And it kind of like it set me on a path forward of understanding the business of property management, because I saw that there are enormous opportunities to grow a business through property management rather than grow a business through sales. And so hence I started off on a journey of a career by design. And I thought, like one day I want to be able to empower business owners with the courage to take control of their business and, have a business that represents their vision and their brand and their personality. But for me to do that, I had to understand everything about not just property management, but the business of real estate. And so hence my journey started. And I've worked in all areas of real estate with large franchise groups and smaller boutique agencies, wealth companies to understand, how the investor feels. I've purposely invested in real estate myself to understand what it's like from an investor's, point of view. And it's all brought me to this point here today. Like you, I'm passionate. I'm on a crusade to empower positive change in the property management industry by infusing business leaders with the courage to pursue their dream.
Love it. Cool. It's very similar to my why, or our business why, which is to transform property management businesses and their owners. So, well, let's get into this. So, streamlining business operations. So maybe we should start with, why is this important?
Well, this is very important because if you don't streamline business operations, you become what I call a business built on desperate measures instead of deliberate methods. Everything is kind of like becomes by default. Every decision is by default. Recruiting new staff is by default. Service promises is by default. And you start to become another, like Me Too property management company where we all start to look the same. You lose sight of your vision and your why you started to offer property management services in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And, when I was learning everything I could about what's so good about property management business operations and what goes wrong, I started to see that, streamlining systems was a major cause of why things go wrong in property management. And that actually led me to go on a search and discovery tour of other industries to see how, they had systems and processes and things like that. And it actually brought me here to where I'm living right now in Orange County, California. In 2007, I went to the Disney Institute to learn how Disney, creates all of their processes and streamlines everything that they do, and discover why people will spend, if you're like me and had to travel from Australia to go to Disneyland, you can spend a few tens of thousands of dollars, you know, like going there, taking your family.
Yeah.
And, you know, all for the privilege of standing in a line to get on a ride for up to 2 hours. And, you know, I discovered people don't complain. You know, they actually stand in these lines and they sing and they whistle and they talk to each other. Yet people call a property management company, and if they're not responded to within a matter of minutes, they become very frustrated. And my discovery was it's because they don't know the process either. And so if a company is built on processes, then, you know, everyone will work within the guidelines of those processes, including the clients that you're dealing with. So, you know, that becomes a very, very strong foundation in creating success in any property management business. So, yeah, you know, it's just critical. And if you look at the other businesses or other industries like Starbucks, you know, it's all built on processes. It's all built on how do we create maximum efficiency, right down to measuring how long does it take for the barista to get the scoop of coffee beans out of the sack and put them into the machine that makes the coffee. And if we move the coffee bag 2 inches closer, that's going to save over a period of time, you know, 100 hours every month. And it also reduces the loss of coffee bean spillage. So I started to understand the concept of time efficiency through processes and streamlining with systems, and related it all back to how do we do it in property management.
I love it. So I love the idea of, I mean, essentially what you're saying is that processes, just like the example you gave with lines at Disney, which I don't want to stand in those, by the way, but it disarms people by them knowing that there's process. And I think it creates some safety for them. They really have two choices at that point, is to choose into the process that exists or to not. But if a process isn't there, then what naturally ends up happening is people try to implement or push their own agenda or their own process onto the property manager.
Exactly.
I need this done by here. I need this done at this time. I need them to show up now or this time, or, you know, so they'll try to push their agenda and process onto the property manager because there isn't a clear one for them to see.
Exactly. And hence, you know, the business starts to become very reactive then. And you will hear the, you know, like the shock horror stories where a property manager says, we just lost an owner. They terminated their, you know, management with us. And we thought they were really happy because we never hear from them. Well, you know, you never hear from them and you've never had that contact with them. So they're thinking, you know, like, what are they doing? You know, where's the value in what I pay? So whatever you do, it's got to be consistent across every client. And, you know, again, I'll relate this back to Disney, where, you know, the people who run the rides, I mean, a lot of them are just, you know, young kids, they're college kids, and they don't start to get reactive when they can see that the line is, you know, 2, 3, 4 hours long on, you know, Independence Day for the Incredibles ride last year. You know, everyone stood in the hot sun for 4 hours, and, you know, the Disney cast, as they call them, they just did their job and kept smiling and, you know, just pushing the people through and offering alternatives for single rider and things like that. So, you know, we can learn a lot from Disney.
So I like the idea of what you were saying about kind of just making sure that the process is visible. So something I noticed that you sparked a memory in is in the past I had jobs working in IT, and when you work in IT at a company, it doesn't matter how good of a job you do. You still are kind of the lowest person on the totem pole when it comes to there being an emergency. If there's a problem with the server, something goes down in the middle of the night, you're on call. It doesn't matter if you're like one of the top executives in the business or you're paid really well. Like, and if you do everything perfect, nobody would notice. Nobody would notice. And everybody would say, why do I even pay you? And then if there's a problem, they notice. And then they would say, why do we even pay you?
Yeah.
And so what I realized, because I'm a little bit smart, just a little bit, what I realized is if I just was noisy about what I was doing, my bosses would think, or my superiors or whatever, they would now see that I was doing stuff. I'm like, hey, I just upgraded this. Hey, I just took care of this. Hey, there hasn't been any problems with this because I did this. And so I just started being noisy about the things that I was doing. I worked at HP for a little while as well. And I had a boss in Texas while I was in Boise. And it was the same thing. He was like, what are you guys doing? And are you doing this? And he'd ask each person on my team, is the other one doing their job, and this kind of thing. And so I just started updating my instant messenger status with what I was working on, just so he could see, to reduce that anxiety that he had that we weren't doing anything. And then he started to think I was the only one on the team doing stuff. Right. And so maybe there's a little secret in what you had mentioned, that the property managers need to be a little bit more visible in what they're doing to maintain these properties, in letting people know that, hey, we did something here, and keeping the owners informed so that they go, okay, that's why I pay you.
Yes, exactly. It's, like evidence defeats doubt, and you've got to share, the value to the clients and remind them, hey, like over the past year, we've managed to increase your rent by 10%, and it's 5% above the average in the area. And this means that to you. Your asset value has increased this much. Now, we're here to help you to maximize returns and optimize growth. This is what we've done so far with you. What are your goals for the future? Perhaps you might consider buying another property, because you've built equity in this property and you've built income in this property. So, it's about planting the seeds of thought in your client's mind, and always having that connection, because, like property management can be as frustrating for the rental property owners as it is for property managers, but it need not be. It all comes down to your systems, which when you've got systems, it then articulates your value and worth and your service promise as well to the clients.
All right. So we're talking about streamlining business operations. We're talking about implementing systems, making sure there's processes. So how would you define streamlining business operations? Like what really is it? Because it sounds kind of a nebulous, sort of all-encompassing sort of thing, I think.
It truly is. And you're quite correct. A lot of people don't understand, how do I streamline my processes? I've got, different systems for this and different systems for that. But what they quite often have, and we do a lot of, diagnostic reporting on business operations to see, where things might be falling through the cracks or things are not working together. And the thing with property management is we have a multitude of things going on at any given time. We also have, every task that we do has its own timeline and has its own priority. And then for every task that we do, it has a plethora of tasks involved within that one task. And it could have several team members involved in that one task as well. So, for instance, if we're bringing on a new management, then, there is a lot of admin work involved in that. And when we bring on a new management, that then moves on to leasing that property, finding a tenant for that property. And it's not always the same person involved. So what you need is a business that's built on a platform of scalability, and a business that's built on a platform of serviceability, so that we can always service the clients, scale our business growth. And to do that means that we need to make sure we're streamlining systems. So, streamlining systems in property management is about identifying every task that we do in property management and almost seeing your business like it's a series of all these, cogs that all work together. And those cogs need to, turn in perfect sync so that we're just moving on to the next task, next team member that needs to be done. And there is nothing that kind of like creates that and what they call the bushfires starting because something has fallen through the cracks or something has stopped another process from being completed. And so creating systems to me is something that needs to be engineered. You can't look at one system and say, we're going to do this for, onboarding new managements, and we're going to use this other system for, looking after the property once it's, we've got it occupied and things like that. All of those systems all have to work as one. And, the only way to do this is to engineer, to architecturally design how your systems work together so that as your business grows and you bring in new team members or new roles, you can seamlessly move one task to a new role and, know that it's not going to fall through the cracks, or know that you don't have a team member who says, I got this, I've got this relationship with the client, I'll just do it all. And whilst they're focusing on that, other things are falling through the cracks. Mm-hmm. And, a good point there is whenever you've got team members who say, I've got the relationship with the client, you've got a problem because the relationship is with your brand. Your team represent your brand and your vision. And if you've infused your team with your brand culture and personality and promise and standards, then all the team are representing exactly what your vision is for your business.
Right. So I love that. So the brand relationship is greater than the individual person relationship that should be in the company. And everybody should have that mindset on your team.
Absolutely.
So now you mentioned a lot about platforms, systems, scalability. I know a lot of property managers out there are a little bit more nerdy than the average real estate person. And they're listening to this and they're thinking, what system should I be using? Like, what is the ultimate software for doing all these processes and systemizing my business? Do you have a favorite?
Well, in my role, I do get to look at a lot of different software. I do, due diligence. And I think my best answer to that is it depends on your business, and it truly does. Mm-hmm. When you look at software, it's got to work for you. It's got to work for 1, your budget, 2, your growth plans, and 3, how you're going to build your business. And what you want that software to represent about your business. Currently, the company that I'm working for here in California is using Rent Manager. And that's been very good because, for us, we've got over 30 branches spread out from South LA to San Diego. So that's a huge area that we cover. And our home office is, in the middle, somewhere in the middle, in Orange County. So through that, we've been able to customize that software so it suits our scalability and the way that we service our clients and our agents. So we've got over 3,000 agents in First Team. And so we want to make sure that we have a way of measuring the sort of referrals that our agents come in and keeping them connected to that client. So Rent Manager works for this company. There's other great ones like Buildium is very, very good. That started out, small to medium businesses, and I think it fits really well in that, marketplace. But I know that they've been doing a lot of work on how can they, build a platform that is useful for bigger businesses as well. And then, of course, there's AppFolio and there's a lot of popular ones out there. And I encourage people to, when they're choosing software, choose software based on a due diligence that they do in accordance with what they're looking for in the software. But the other thing to remember with software is it's not your system. Your software is the platform, if you like, that you store all your data and generate your reports. Your system is your manual operations. And what I mean by this is a great analogy are pilots, because pilots have these massive computer systems that fly the planes. But pilots have to go through a manual process of checklisting that everything is working, that 3 people agree that everything is working before that plane will take off. So there is a manual process to flying a plane, and property management is the same. And it's these manual processes where a lot of companies are going wrong, because everyone is doing it their own way, their own way that they interpret a task, and it doesn't represent the brand.
Right. And this is a problem with processes. And for those listening, I'm a big fan of the software process tree. It allows you to have a process system that is outside of whatever accounting or back office you're using for your property management company. And you can really dial in. So those listening, check out the previous episode that I did with Process Street. I think you'd be really interested in hearing that. But yeah, I do. I think the challenge with most process systems or systems out there where they sort of have some process documentation in the business is that once a team member has read the process document and they've done it a couple of times, they think they know it. It's in their head. They're not going to go back and check it. They're not checking against the process. If the document gets updated or the process gets changed or that person makes changes to the process, they're probably not updating that. So there's always this gap between what the process is and what's documented, if it even is at all. And this is natural because, I mean, think about all of us that drive cars. We don't check the manual for the car or read the DMV, booklet on how to drive the car or all the rules of driving every time we get into the car. The first time we probably checked every mirror and made sure everything was okay, but now we just drive it. It's like an extension of our body. And that's how team members feel, but they may not be, they may simplify things. They may shortcut, they may cut things out. They may forget about things. They maybe weren't onboarded properly. They weren't trained properly. And so I'm a big fan of having a process that they have to use each time where they have to check something off. There's like some sort of manual input that says, I did this and I followed these steps.
Exactly. I totally agree. I was at a conference where one of the doctors from one of our busiest hospitals in Australia, he works in the emergency section, he said regardless of the level of emergency, they still have to follow a checklist where everything is ticked off. And that's where we're going wrong in property management, is because property managers keep it in their head and they make a slight change to a process which has, like sometimes devastating results to the overall business. And, my own company, ireviloution, we've designed those manual processes which are architecturally designed. But for every manual process you have, you've got to have a way of measuring. So you've also got your, management leadership that locks into that so that we know that we're being efficient and compliant and, consistent and complete everything that we're doing. So to me, when you have a system, there's 3 different components when it comes to streamlining. And one is your processes. So you've identified what all the processes are for every task that we do in property management, that then we lock in and we can measure, the efficiency, effectiveness, profitability, performance, productivity, everything to do with that process. Then what locks into that is your resources. So
this is number 2.
Yes. So P plus R, resources, is the resources have to be designed. Now, if there is a tweak in those resources, which we find a lot of property managers say, but I want to put this step in. Well, that step might be somewhere else in the process. So by tweaking it, you can actually break something down. And then the third step, which is really, really critical, is T. P plus R plus T equals training. So your training is, of vital importance. And what we've discovered in property management is, to become a property manager, we're really learning theory, the theory of property management. And if you look at, doctors who go through university and college for 7 years, learning how to be a doctor, it's still all theory. Once they've graduated, they've got to go into the learning hospitals to learn the practice of being a doctor, the practice of what happens when a patient does present themselves with an emergency or with, some kind of condition. And then, it's ongoing training for them. So the training that we have in property management needs to be something where if you're putting your team through training, it's got to be consistent as well. Because if they're going off to all these different training courses, then they're not learning the process and the resource. So there's a breakdown. So all three elements of the P plus R plus T are critical in streamlining business operations.
All right, I'm going to recap this. So you're saying everyone gets that they need processes, and it's helpful to make sure that the processes are very well defined and people know how long it's going to take. Explain resources, because I think that's a little bit less clear.
Yes. So
what is a resource?
So resources are your paper documents. So
Okay.
there is still, when we put information into software, there's still a way that we, gather that information or the data that is then, put into the software to make sure that we've got all the information we need. Okay. So I call it your intel and your insight into everything that we do. And so the resources are just like what I mentioned before with the, emergency doctors or the pilots, where the resource is their checklist. And what happens if that? And then your resources are also the way that, the business owner can measure productivity, performance, it's how they measure, monitor, and manage what's going on. So resources are things like one, checklist, two, the different forms that you use for, like some legal forms and some just best practice forms, like getting a tenant to sign a disclaimer that, they know that they're not allowed to disconnect smoke detectors, for instance, so that we know that, well, we didn't just tell them, we actually got them to sign a form and they understand the consequences. Different forms are, your productivity trackers. So those manual forms like that, so we can measure productivity against what's going into your software. So that's all your resources. The resources that we've developed, we've got over 500 resources there. And that's the enormity of the sort of resources that you need to, manage a property management business, depending on the size, of course, and team structure. And then the training, I think that kind of like speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You need to make sure that they're actually leveraging these things and they understand how to. And that, I like what you said, there needs to be consistency, because a lot of people just want to send their team off to these property management conferences and they come back with a whole different set of ideas. Well, this company's doing this. I had one client that didn't even talk to me, but came back and said, I decided to change my whole structure from departmental to another structure or whatever. He was changing his entire company, and then everything fell apart. And I was like, how did you know that was right for you? He's like, well, all the cool people were doing it, was basically the answer.
Yeah.
All the cool people were changing their whole business. And I said, your business was working and now it's not.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah,
you hear that a lot. And that's where I think that, they haven't got a plan to start off with. Every business has to be built upon a plan. It's not a financial plan. It's an operational business plan. So what they've done is they've created their vision for success, and they've mapped it out. It's like creating the way that you're going to get from LA to Brisbane in Australia. It's like, you've got a plan, you've got a timeline, you've got a budget, you've got all of that. But a lot of them, they become very reactionary. Their business becomes default instead of design. And that's where they start to be, like desperate. It's like, oh, this is not working. Let's change something else. They lose the deliberation around their business because they don't have a plan in the first place. And a killer of business growth is when you keep changing what you're doing because someone else is doing it. Like
shiny object syndrome.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, that's a term we use a lot because business owners like, oh, you know, that's happening over there. Let's try that. And that's why we all become clones of each other. You know, when you talk to consumers, the people that we serve, they all see us as the same, you know, so
Yeah.
it's very important.
Okay. So, so you have processes, resources, training, and I think anytime there's a process, somebody needs to be responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be clear accountability. There needs to be process documentation, and there needs to be a clear definition of done. Like, does this need to be done, and how can we verify that it's done? There needs to be accountability. So, and so there needs to be some transparency there as well, like some sort of scoreboard or some way to know that they've won or completed or finished, and there needs to be that accountability and responsibility. So if we have all these things in place, then is that everything that they need?
Yeah, you know, yes and no, because, you know, the other thing is the business leader, or if they appoint someone to, you know, manage that business, they've got to keep their finger on the pulse, because, you know, accountability is, you know, just king when it comes to property management. And, you know, one of the problems I have in property management is they're not profitable. You know, they've got property managers who keep saying, I'm so busy, I can't get this done, I need someone else. And because they don't have the data and the statistics about, you know, how long it takes to do a job, because they're not using processes and resources, then they start to react to that team member saying, I can't do this anymore. You know, like I'm too busy, I'm stressed out, I'm going to leave. And they think, oh no, you can't leave, because if you leave, I'm going to lose all my clients. Well, it all comes back to, you know, there's no point in having processes and resources if you don't have accountability. And that's what I was mentioning before, where you've got to be able to manage it. So you've got to have the ability to say, we know exactly what's going on with the business. We know when we've got peaks and when there's a pressure on the team because of those peaks. And we also know when we need to bring in new resources in the terms of new team and what that role will be and what we're prepared to, you know, pay and offer that new team member. So yeah, for every task that we do, the objective is to be consistent, to be compliant, and to complete within the timeline and priority of that task. And then to be able to, you know, measure how many tasks a property manager is doing daily, weekly, monthly. And the only way you do that is with the business resources. And so we've got something that we call a task tracker. So we can measure many things with that. One thing is the number of tasks a property manager is doing weekly, monthly. And then the other thing is every number tells a story. So you can see that if we've done this, then this should generate a job, new task over here. Was that done? Do the numbers all add up? Are we doing that? And we start to then create that historical data about our business so that we know that, you know, we've got peak times, we've got risk associated with this time of the year with our business. And so the business leader has what we call finger on the pulse, because they can make those decisions, you know, out of deliberation, not desperation.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really helpful in tracking just about anything that you care about in the business, whatever it might be, the one thing that's super helpful is just that it gives you context. I mean, if you even just having 2 data points, like we did this much this last month and we did this much this month, you can tell if it's gone up or down. And
Exactly.
that allows you to understand kind of where, you know, keep your finger on the pulse, as you say, or to have an idea of whether these things are improving or getting worse, or whether the business is changing. And yeah, and property management certainly ebbs and flows during certain times of the year, right?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
it helps you to see, okay, these are the trends that we see during the summer when kids are getting out of school, and these are the trends that we're seeing, you know, through the winter months when things are cooled down. So yeah, so it gives them some context, and that allows them to plan and prepare for the future and understand, all right, we're ahead of where we were last year, or we're behind. We should be concerned, like we can make changes, let's make adjustments. Yeah, and so it allows you to feel safer as an entrepreneur. It
Yeah,
lowers your pressure and noise.
yeah,
It makes you less reactive.
yeah.
And I'm sure there's other benefits that come from all
Oh,
of that.
yeah. Exactly. Well, it takes away, what we said at the start of this, that, they fear losing a client more than they fear losing a team member because, they've got control of their business. And if their team member is, not performing, then they know how to manage them to perform better. Or if they're just, sometimes team members do have a use-by date, and it might be good to let them go, but let them go with respect and honour, rather than, like, oh my gosh, like I'm losing them and I'm going to lose business. We should never, ever have that fear about our business. Our business is about us. It's about our vision.
Right. So team members may have an expiration date.
I think some of them do. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Probably true. Yeah. So wouldn't it be great if they just had that stamped on their forehead when they came to us in the beginning? Then we would know. Like, we wouldn't we get their replacements ready. We get everything documented really clearly. But that's the nice thing about having things documented. So my assistant that I just recently took another job, but we had everything documented, and I wasn't like freaking out like in the past. I might have been freaking out, right? Losing a team member that was critical to operations would be really a big deal, but we've got things documented, and there's this safety that comes with having things documented. And if it's documented well enough, and that's the question to ask yourself, those listening, do you feel like if any certain member of your team left, that you have their knowledge documented so that the next person could step into that without having to be like trained by them directly? Yeah. And if you don't, then that's where business owners have a lot of fear. They have a lot of fear in that, oh no, if I lost this person, it would be so detrimental. And here's the thing I've noticed. Anytime somebody said, oh, it would be the worst thing ever if I lost this one team member, if I lost Susie or whoever this person might be, in my whole business, it would be terrible. It'd be the worst thing ever. That's like the best person for them to lose, because I've noticed every time it's because they don't understand what that person's doing. That person's usually doing a lot of things that maybe are redundant or unnecessary or not done the way you would have them done. And so when they do leave, you have to step in, you have to figure these things out, and you realize, why were they doing it that way? And because we didn't have that transparency into what was really going on, we weren't able to manage it. We weren't able to help improve it. And it wasn't very effective in a lot of situations.
Oh,
I had one assistant that I had for like 3 years, and I thought, oh, if I lost her, it would be the worst thing ever. And really, when I lost that person, it was one of the best things that happened to our business. We changed so many things. I realized a lot of things could be done more efficiently. And it's never as bad as our brains make it out to be.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that, property managers love to be loved, but we need to change that thinking, because we want people to love the brand and respect the team that represent the brand. And, out of respect comes love. So, property managers need to let go and know that clients will respect them if they're delivering on the service promises and results, and they'll feel good about themselves. But, I think, every owner needs to, work their business as if, when a team member leaves, this is what happens. And everything that we've got in our business is all built upon generic names. It's not, a person's name. It's not a person's phone number. It's everything is associated with a role. So I move the team around within the roles, and to the client, it's seamless. It's still first team servicing them.
Right. It's maintenance. It's not Fred.
Exactly. But they know that the team has that personality of, they're friendly, they want to help the clients, and yeah,
love it. Cool. So we've talked about kind of the who, the what, the why. So how do people get started with streamlining their business operations? Maybe we could just dig into the actual process of getting their processes and their resources and their training all dialed in.
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, Jason, because, the thing is, when you're implementing processes, there's a whole process around that as well, because what you want to do is you want to get everyone engaged in it. You need to get your team engaged. You need to get your clients engaged. so they understand what's going on as well. And so you need to create a step-by-step process of, at this step, we're going to implement this new process, and we'll introduce that to the clients because there might be new policy around that as well. And, articulate and communicate that to the clients. So, they've got the buy-in with what we're doing. And they've got the opportunity to, voice any concerns or misunderstandings. So the best thing is know that when you are implementing new processes, then you're going to muddy the waters for a bit. You're going to find all these things that start rising to the surface and you think, like what's going on here? I've got team that are unhappy, I'm losing team. And normally that will happen because you haven't started with the process. So muddy the waters and have a look at what you need to do first. It could be restructuring your team to start off with. It could be redefining and reassigning and realigning roles. But, whatever the step is, you need to look at it like a building, Lego blocks, one by one by one. And this one means that this is going to happen. And once that happens, then this next step is going to happen. So my best advice is don't do it all at once. Have a plan of implementation and a plan of communication as well, and a plan of education. So, it really is a step-by-step process.
Yeah, I think as when we're leading a team, when we're leading a company, our job really is to inspire everybody to be excited about what we're going to be doing rather than control them. And I like to say, whenever we fail to inspire, we always control by default.
Exactly.
So if you can inspire your team and get them excited, hey, we're going to be doing this. Here's why. Here's how this will benefit you. Here's how this will benefit the business. Everything will be better off. And you can get them on board and get them in alignment. Then they will help you do it. They'll help you do it. But if you are trying to control them and force them to say, hey, we're going to be doing this, you're going to churn some people. You're going to lose some people, and especially if you're making changes and they're used to things being done a certain way. That shakes them up and makes them feel insecure, makes them feel uncomfortable, you start documenting their processes and why we didn't document these before. They're thinking, is my job okay? Like why are you having me document this now? I'm doing it. I'm doing a good job, aren't I? Yeah. So we need to really be careful and inspire our team members to take care of these things and help us. I think as entrepreneurs, we also try to shoulder everything on our own a lot of times.
True. Yeah.
And really our team members are the ones that are doing these processes. A lot of times they know it better than us, and they should be the ones helping us do it. And we have the insight, I think, to be able to look at those once they're documented and help them figure out, hey, maybe we can improve this. We can make this better. Let's see if we can make this easier for you or make this faster for you, or what would help you move this forward quicker,
Exactly. One of the things I learned at Disney is Disney has a wonderful way, like everyone who works at Disney wants to be there. And if Disney makes changes, they have a lovely way of making sure that the cast are all, on board and involved. And the way that they do that is they have this program where they all sit around and it's like brainstorming to a degree, but it's, like everyone has a say. And they build on what they're saying. So it's never like, that's not going to work. It's like, yes, and they kind of like build on that idea so that, they bring it around to something that is a way that the business leader can drive their business in the way that they want to. But the team all have that understanding. And, when we go in and we work with businesses, we talk about infusing the team. So not just like, this is what we're doing. It's like if you actually infuse them with the vision and like how it's all going to be for everyone, then they will, have that, kind of like that encouragement and that willingness to like, I want to be a part of this. And that's what you want from your team. Yeah. And your clients too.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we have two types of people on our team. We either have believers or we have hiders. They're just hiders are just there to get a paycheck, probably do as little as possible and complain about us on the weekends, right? And the believers, we get their discretionary time. They're thinking about us after hours. They're thinking about their job. They want to be better. They want to improve. and they're looking for solutions, and it's a very different mindset. And so, but they can't be a believer unless they have something to believe in. And you're
Exactly.
relating that to them, so
Yeah.
we have to give them the chance to be able to believe in us.
Yeah, so true. And, you were talking before, or, when we mentioned about the use by date, sometimes
Yeah.
we can have insight into that as well, because when we bring on our new recruits and then we do our, monthly one-on-ones with them, or however often you do it, that's a way to gain insight into what they're thinking, what their short and long-term dreams are. And you will know that, like at some point, your company might not be able to offer them the future that they're seeking. You don't have the next role for them in their career. And that's okay, because, whilst they've been with your company, they've helped you to grow your company, and you're still in control of your company if you've got all of the systems and processes. And, that person will go off still having respect for your company, and you have respect for them. And
Sure.
That's the way I would love it to be in the industry. If we all understand it's okay to say bye-bye to team, for the right reasons.
Right. Any relationship can be ended amicably.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any relationship.
Yeah.
And I mean, life's all about relationships, and relationships can be ended poorly and very negatively, and it can cause a lot of drama, or they can be ended amicably.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, and we should always look for that route first, right? I mean, that's the best. Well, cool. Well, Jo, is there anything else that our listeners should hear or should know about streamlining business operations before we wrap this up?
I think, Jason, if we just encourage them to not go it alone, because, creating a process and then the resources around it, it does take a lot of work. And it is, like engineering mindset. And I see a lot of property management business owners make the mistake of letting their property managers do it. They say, you bring in the systems and you create the systems. They can't do that. They're employing that person to look after their clients and bring in new clients. And whilst they're doing something that they're not entirely skilled to do, then it's impacting the business. And quite often that person will go and you'll say, well, where are the systems they created? So, I say invest in systems, invest in people that, really know what they're doing when it comes to, designing systems, because all systems should be customized to suit that business as well. And when you implement, do it in stages, do it in a process. So, everyone feels good about the changes that are being made.
So, Jo, how can people get in touch with you if they're wanting some help on their systems and on some of the things we talked about?
Well, thank you. They can email me at Jo, and I'll spell this out because I've got like a very confusing business name. But as I was explaining to Jason before, my business name, ireviloution, is my surname backwards, Oliveri. And I always said I'd create a revolution in the industry. So it kind of went together. So my email is Jo, J-O, at ireviloution. That's ireviloution.com. Or you can call my cell here in the US. I'm living in California, so Pacific time, and it's 917-969-4066. Or even look me up on Facebook or LinkedIn.
Perfect. All right, cool. Well, Jo, it's been fun connecting with you. I think we share a lot of alignment, and I look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Definitely, as I do look forward to watching you. I love what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, we'll let you go.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.
All right. So if you are a property management entrepreneur that wants to add doors and make a difference, as we talked about in the intro, please reach out to DoorGrow. We would love to help and see if we can help you grow your company. And be sure to check out Jo. Really cool stuff that she was talking about today. So I hope you got a lot of value from this episode. And until next time, to our mutual growth. Bye, everyone.